Good evening, everyone. We are so excited to see you once again. Welcome to the Wealth Wednesday show, where we get to discuss about money and business matters. Tonight, we are so excited to have an amazing guest with us, Ms Eileen Slatko, all the way from United States of America. She will be talking to us about the psychology of money, how your behavior towards money can affect your financial destiny, and most of all, how you can master your financial fate. So without taking much of your time, ensure you have subscribed to our YouTube channel by clicking the subscribe button below. Turn on notifications so that when we host amazing guests like Miss Eileen, you will be the first one to know. And as well, watch as many of our videos as possible so that you can become financially healthy. So allow me to give Miss Eileen the platform for her to introduce herself so that we can get into the topic right away. Miss Eileen, welcome and thank you so much for your time today.
Sheila, thank you so much for inviting me onto your webcast. This is very exciting. And hi to everyone out there. I spent 25 years in the financial industry, and then 10 years ago decided that what I really wanted to do was to coach. And I specialize really in coaching women to help them understand their money, to help them feel comfortable making decisions about their money, and for them to be empowered. So a lot of that work gets back to their mindset, because the mindset that we have is really the thing that determines how we respond to everything else in life. And with money, that means we either have a comfortable retirement and lots of options, or we struggle. And so I help women to figure out how to be empowered, to understand it, to feel comfortable asking questions, and to learn to do it all themselves and to tackle that money mindset that stands in the way sometimes.
Wow, that is so amazing, especially with the focus on women. In our society, women are usually the ones at the receiving end of everything, and it's very important for a woman, especially the young women like us, to become financially literate at an early age, because where we are headed to, it's going to need you to be financially educated. And unfortunately, most of our schools don't teach about finances. So you just have to bump into money and start finding your way out. I'm super amazed by what you're doing. And, I've been following your work, and I really must say you're doing a commendable job. You personally inspire me to do more.
Oh, thank you. To your point about schools not offering it, one of the and I think definitely they should, but one of the most impactful things that influence the way we think about money, the way we handle money, even as adults, is what happens around the kitchen dining room table or the breakfast table when we're small. So we hear our parents talk about money, we see how they handle money, and we start to take all of their attitudes in, and they become our attitudes. And then we're on that sort of same trajectory that we see our families or our parents on, until we become very conscientious about the fact that we can make choices and that we can change those money stories. So even by the time they would start to offer it in school, which I think is very necessary, the component there that's really missing is that people understand that they can approach it differently. It doesn't have to be exactly the way they've seen their parents do it or the way they're doing it now, which I think is really exciting. We're not just in a little box and we're going to stay in that box forever. We can impact how we view money and constantly be improving ourselves about it.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. Actually, we are in a season of unlearning what you learned that is not working for you. Because some of the money principles we may have captured while growing up, you find they're not working anymore, especially in the current world where there's technology and all that. For example, when we were growing up, people never used to save that much on banks. They used to use piggy banks, just to save some money. But we're in a technological world, so you opt for, I'm gonna take that principle of saving, but I'm gonna now incorporate technology in it. So I don't have to, have a piggy bank in the house. I can't sleep because I'm seeing my dollars there every now and then, and and that takes me to one question: what is financial fate? I saw you are an advocate of people mastering their financial fate. What would you describe that to be?
Great question. I really, really believe so strongly that we have the opportunity every day to impact our financial future. And so that's what I call your financial fate. We can't help the family that we were born into. We can't help the circumstances that we were born into, but every day we have the opportunity to control our financial future, our financial fate by the choices that we make each day. And so in a nutshell, that's our financial fate is, you know, do I have to be where my parents were? Do I have to act the same way? No, you don't. You have your financial fate is in your hands. All you have to do is be willing to be conscientious and thoughtful about every decision that you make. And yeah, make about every decision you make. Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've just spoken about financial future. You don't have to repeat the mistakes that your parents made. And this gets me to think: how does one get to master their financial fate?
Great question. I I think what happens, and I have seen this when I was in the financial business and I was working with clients, I was always amazed at how some people would make decisions. And I was amazed at how I could present information that would be useful for them in growing their wealth. And they would make a decision that was completely the opposite, that would actually help them um, in that would actually not help them in terms of growing. So I've been amazed at that. And so I started to look at what holds people back. And it really gets down to what I call the stories we tell ourselves, right? So
Mm,
you have a story about when you were growing up, this is what you saw, this is how it was. I have a story about the same thing. I was on an interview yesterday and I was talking to someone and we were sort of divulging a little bit of personal information. I said, thank God my mother doesn't listen to the podcast because she's not technologically savvy, but she's still around at 86, so that's wonderful. But my mother, when I was growing up, every closet in our house, and it was a 4-bedroom house, 5-bedroom house eventually, every closet was filled with her clothes that she bought at the store and didn't even have time to wear them. So they still had all of the tags on them. This is how she helped herself feel better. And this is one of the
mm,
things I see most is that there's an emotional need that people have, and money becomes the way to fill up that space. So getting back to financial fate, how do we start? How do we start owning our financial fate and mastering that financial fate? Is all of those decisions have to be looked at as through the spectrum of what do they get me today and what could that money get me in the future. This is what I try so hard to get clients to look at is when you have an emotional buy today, that
mm.
satisfies you today. But if you did something constructive with that money, it would satisfy you a whole lot more in the future.
Wow, I really agree with your school of thought because most of us, we've been victims. At some point, when you feel you are stressed, you just go for a shopping spree. Instead of taking a nature walk, you go for a shopping spree, you buy everything. Then when you get home, you even realize, like, this thing doesn't fit me. And that is money you've already spent. And that comes back to our mindset, because most of us, we've been wired to think money is just spending and nothing else. So we are trying to fill a void that money shouldn't fill. It's we need another thing that's not money. And I think that leads us to, what is behavioral finance? you know um Maybe you could explain to us, um is there also a difference between behavioral finance or money behavior? What is that, and how does it come about?
Yeah, great question. It's a whole school of thought. So behavioral finance, it basically looks at the emotional, the psychological, the market, the social, influences. It takes a look at all of the things that impact our decisions, and specifically looks at the field of money when it comes to that. So you could look at behavioral finance on a market level. How do people respond in the market to different stimulus? We can use the cryptocurrencies right now, or some of these other things that they soar and then they crash. It's not really investing. It might be a good investment long term, but that's not why people are buying it now, right? There's an emotional component. On a personal level, behavioral finance is trying to it looks at all of those things, and then my job is to help people uncouple the emotion, right? So you have to decouple the emotion from all of those purchases, because what you're talking about and what we've said is, yeah, people use money, use spending to fill up that need, that emotional need that they have. And so what we need to do is decouple those things so that you have financial decisions that aren't as a result of your emotional state. In fact, one of the things that I encourage my clients to do is go into a store or online. If you're online and you have your shopping cart, find something you love, put your stuff in there, put the stuff in the cart. But then the caveat is you have to leave without paying for it. I mean, I'm not saying steal it if you're in a store. I'm saying you have to leave the stuff in the store and then go home and spend 48 hours or 72 hours and before you go back to buy it. And what happens most times is in that 48 or 72 hour period, all the emotion is gone from what was leading you to make that purchase to begin with. And all of a sudden you go, yeah, I don't need another pair of black shoes. I don't need another fill in the blank, because at that time I felt like I needed it. But now that I've had a few days to think about it, I don't need it. So the money personalities, or there are schools of thought about the different types of personalities that people have, and I've seen 5 to 7 of them, and they put people into boxes, and they have great descriptions about whether are you a compulsive saver or compulsive spender, or somewhere in between, or you're indifferent, or you're a gambler, or you're a worrier. But to me, I don't like to use those terms, and I'll tell you why. I think if I said to you, or I said to a client, oh gosh, Sheila, bad news, you're a compulsive spender. You're in this box, and all of a sudden I've taken away any impetus you might have to change because I've said, no, you're in that box. This is your money personality. So I think those boxes, are a little, I mean, I'm very cautious about using them. I try not to describe them, but if you Google, if you go online, you can see these boxes that people use to describe. I would say that can be used to describe someone's behavior today, but it doesn't describe who they are. It just describes their behavior.
I really like the point of people being put in boxes in the name of their financial personality, because you limit the person's even capability to think out. And I think that's where the cliche think outside the box came in, because maybe this person realized I've been put in this box of personality. I can't get out and do something extra. And I love the fact that you said it's important we separate the behavior of the money behavior of a person from who the person really is. Because with money behavior, you can always change as you keep on learning. It's just like, it's a habit. Just as you said, for example, if I'm a spender, an emotional spender, if I incorporate the rule that you just said, I go do shopping and leave everything at the store and go and stay for 48 to 72 hours. If I do that thing for 3 months, I'm gonna change from being an emotional spender to being a conscious spender. So I like the point you said, we need to separate people from who they are, and instead of putting them in the personality box. I think that one answers our next question, where I had said maybe you could just highlight what are these financial personalities that people would need to know about, so that they are like, okay, if you're gonna tell me this is this, no, I'm not taking that in.
Well, I'll give you 7. And again, I would say these are, although we call them, again, if you go online and Google or what have you, if you read about it, they're typically called the personalities. I would say these are descriptions of actions, not personalities, but it would be the compulsive saver. So this is someone who doesn't buy ever, right? They just save their money, and they need to have it there, sort of like counting their, the king counting his gold sitting in the corner with it. The compulsive spender who never thinks about the effects, the after effects of having spent all this money, just makes unnecessary purchases, very emotionally driven. The compulsive money maker who has to keep making money without regard to what's enough. The indifferent to money person who, and this I think happens maybe after you have wealth, is that you become more indifferent to it because you know that your needs are taken care of. So they don't really worry about money decisions. The saver splurger, sort of the, if we equate it to eating, sort of the binge purge kind of a, eating disorder. So the saver splurger, they save, but then they've got to just go buy because they need to get that emotional fix. The gambler, who probably doesn't quite understand the difference between investing and just hoping, but combination between spenders and money makers. So they make big money, but then they blow it all. And then the worrier, the person who's consistently worried about money and probably has a hard time doing anything with it because they're just worried all the time. Those are categories, but again, I would caution that those describe behaviors, not people, to me.
Actually, I agree with your school of thought, because we shouldn't describe people based on their behaviors or actions towards money. And I totally agree with you, especially the warriors. I think I've met a lot of them. They get over worried such that they don't do anything at all at the end of the day. And you when we started, you mentioned something about mindset and our money behaviors. So which one comes first, and how do they affect our financial fate?
I think that we are certainly in the US, we are very consumer driven. Um, I try and walk every Saturday with one of my sisters, and when it's inclement weather, we go to one of the local malls. They open it up early, and there's a whole bunch of walkers there. But at the end of the walk, the stores are beginning to open, and it is stunning to me to watch families come in with these young children at 2 and 3 and 4 years old, and they're already consumer driven. They're already running from store to store, mommy, mommy, I want this, mommy, I need that. And, so we have money, we have money behaviors that start well before our mindset is formed, unfortunately, because of the way we're enculturated. I think the money mindset is something that happens when we can become consciously aware of how we're making decisions. So there's a cycle that happens, and it especially is impactful when it comes to money. So something might happen when we're young. We have an emotion about that, whatever happened, that I was the only kid on the playground that couldn't afford to buy ice cream when the ice cream man came around in his truck, and I felt really ashamed of that. So when I think about money, that may be the shame, maybe the fact that I always have to be spending a lot of money because that makes me feel better, because then I'm not ashamed. But what happens is, instead of it making me feel better, once I spend a lot of money, and I'm shortening the cycle here, but once I spend a lot of money, that I'm ashamed all over again because I know I shouldn't have spent that money. So the cycle begins again, right? If it's through pain or fear or shame or any of the other emotions that might be driving our spending habits, our financial habits, we have to just decouple all of that and begin to look at it. So I would say to you that mindset generally comes later when people are more focused and conscious about it. And the mindset drives them the success of their financial fate. Because then you can, right? Because then you can stop and say, do I need to make this purchase? What does it get me if I make this purchase? Is that in line with my goals? And once you have actually a framework for making those decisions, then you can be much more effective. I'll tell a quick story about myself. This was in a conversation I had, I don't know, maybe 8 or 9 months ago. So we were just in the very sort of heavy stage, at least here, of lockdown, and it felt like the world was ending. We've all been through this, right? The last 15 months. But I'm wearing yoga pants and jeans every day, and not a high heel in sight, not a suit in sight. They're sitting in my closet, and I kept going to this one website, and I kept clicking on this pair of black heels, and I kept putting in my cart, and then I would walk away. So I was talking to someone, and I said, I kept doing this, and I was practicing what I preached. So I would leave it in the cart and I would walk away. But then if it was still available, I'd put it back in the cart and then I'd walk away. And I had this whole thing in my head that, oh my God, those black pumps would look so great with a killer suit. And then I just had to start laughing. I'm like, who's wearing a killer suit or killer heels right now? I mean, who knows when I'll be wearing those again. So I finally took it out of the cart, and it no longer available. And I felt so much better about it because I had built this up in my head, because I'm the same as you and everyone else, right? I have these desires to shop and buy also, but I try and catch myself before I do it, when it's unnecessary. But so I just had a laugh that here I am thinking about this great suit I'm going to wear and these great heels I'm going to have. And who knows, who knows when I'm ever going to put heels and a suit on again back then.
Mm.
Thinking. So anyway, I do it too.
I really like this story. It's very, very practical. We have all been there. You buy something, even think of the dress you will wear with it, and you never get to wear the dress at all. Or even when you start wearing it, you don't like them. So I think we should all embrace that practical story, because at the end of the day, it's you feel good you overcame that desire, because it wasn't really a need, it was just a want. And I know how it feels when you finally like, whoa, I didn't buy it. Containing that is
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, and the other part of that. So
mhm,
then what we do is we say, and I'll just use a number so that I can project out. But if I was going to spend $200 today,
mhm,
and if you were going to spend $200 today, because you're quite a bit younger than I am, if you projected out at
mhm,
average rate of return, if it was
mhm,
invested, if you were invested in the stock market or you were in index funds or not savings account these days because they don't pay anything, but if you were invested with that money
mhm,
instead of spending it, what would that money equate to when you needed it in retirement? And so that's the other side of it in the decision making matrix is, okay, I feel better today, maybe I
mhm,
feel better today buying it, but that $200 today for you at an average
mhm,
rate of return
mhm,
could be worth $5,000. Is that
mhm,
$200 purchase really worth 5,000?
mhm. No.
Probably not. So that's the other side of it that's really important. It's not just not spending because there are things
Mhm,
that we do need. It's consciously making those choices because it's the shiny object today versus having options in the future. So that's really mastering your financial fate when you say which is more important, feeling a brief high today when I go buy something and I come home with my new shoes, or knowing that I'll be more comfortable when I retire and need it.
I like that. It's either you choose a shiny object today or more options in the future. I definitely would want to go for more options in the future,
I
although
think
it's
so.
very hard. It's very hard. People, we have this ideology that you only live once. So it makes it difficult to think about more options in the future. But yeah, as you said, it's the best thing to do is always the hardest thing to do.
It is. That is definitely true. And even if you buy them, even if I had bought those shoes, I'm
Mhm,
sure my future would be okay. But
mhm,
the mastering your financial fate, the step that makes it mastery is that you
mhm,
actually are consciously choosing to do that, knowing what the ramifications are. So we need to be able to step back from and decouple all of the emotion in spending money. If we can do that, then it's not that we don't buy, it's not that we don't spend money, it's that we
mhm.
understand what the actual choice is.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Especially conscious spending is very, very important. So you don't get to regret later on, like, why did I do this thing? So, to what extent does our, financial and emotional behaviors linked?
I think they're linked. let me step back. I think most of us walk around feeling some hole somewhere in us. We're not good enough. We're not pretty enough. We're not handsome enough. We're not smart enough. We're not something enough. And money has always been an easy fix. If I work for a day and I have money in my pocket, I can go spend it. I feel better. I feel prettier. I feel more important. I feel whatever I feel. So money has always been that. I think they're linked mostly in a negative way, but they don't have to be in a negative way, right? As long as we can decouple our emotional well-being from how much money we spend, we actually can begin to have a lot more sustainable emotional well-being by knowing that we have money put away, the money is growing. In the future, we're going to feel more comfortable. We'll take you and I. You have a whole career ahead of you. I have a much shorter time frame for my career because I'm that much older. So the decisions that I make today won't impact they may still impact my future, but they can't grow as much as if you don't spend something today. So, but you cross over a point. I have a young client who I said, here's what I want you to do. I want you to live on your small salary. And when you get a raise, I want you to put the whole raise in the bank. I want you to save the whole raise. And he's like, well, but I wanted to spend some. I said, you can't. No. I mean, you can, buy if you need, but nope. For 2 years, I want you to just concentrate on putting as much in the bank as you can and investing it. So at the end of that 2 years, a couple of things have happened. He's not so emotionally driven money. He's gotten raises, so now he's making even more, and he's got a lot of money. I mean, comparatively, he's got money that's invested. So now when he begins to spend, he doesn't go crazy with it. He's decoupled that emotion and he knows that he's got money put aside. That was actually the story of what happened with my son when he started working. So, but I said to him, you must save for a couple of years and it will impact every future decision that you make. And he was really very good about doing that. And he, is doing well for himself right now. But it's funny, he'll still say to me, Ma, I bought these shoes. I don't know, maybe I spent too much. I'm like, you can afford it and you've put a lot of money aside. But he still feels the need, and I'm very glad that balance, what's appropriate to spend today versus what that could be in the future.
Yeah, and actually that drives me back to one of our core values, which is living financially healthy. That doesn't mean that you become stingy to yourself, but it cuts across even the emotional well-being. Because, just the example of your son, right now, after that period of saving, he learned to take care of his emotions in such a way that he's not an emotional spender. He's conscious now, and that results to the financial well-being wholesomely, because now the person has control over money instead of money controlling his or her life. And 2021 and 2020 has been one of the years, I don't know if it has ever happened before, but in my little years here on earth, I haven't seen a pandemic like this one. I haven't seen any pandemic. So you could tell us what are the behaviors affecting our money behavior? Sorry, what are the key behaviors affecting our attitude towards money, especially putting in mind the way the pandemic has been a roller coaster for most people?
Yeah, it's an interesting study in psychology, I think. I think there are people who have been impacted. Many people have been impacted by fear. And I actually worry about those people in the future. And I worry about if there were young children, for the young children that have seen their families worry about money, this is going to be their money story that they see around their kitchen table. And, it's going to impact them in the future because they're going to be worrying about it all the time. The same way if you go through extreme hunger, you tend to hoard food all the time. So I think there's that behavior. And then there's the other behavior where people say, well, I don't know, maybe the world's going to end tomorrow, so I'm just going to spend everything I have. I think there's been very little in between for the people who are still emotionally driven. I think it's been a real barbell of, both sides of the, both ends of the spectrum, but much less in between is what I see.
Yeah,
Do you think?
yeah. Yeah, I think I actually like the point that you said you are actually worried of the young ones because this is their money story. And, it's not a good one, but I believe they're gonna learn. And one thing I've seen that has come up during this time is the advocacy for people to learn about money. In as much as the pandemic has been there, I've also seen an increase in the desire of people wanting to know how to become money wise. I've also seen an increase in people like you and me and many others who are like, sharing information on how to, handle money effectively. So I believe it's going to be, depending on the decisions people make, that is how it will end up turning out. And you mentioned about money shame. So how does one overcome money shame? Because you spoke about it um, some time back. Maybe you could highlight how can one overcome money shame, especially if it happened during your early years and now you are, getting some money. How do you get to overcome that so that you don't be a person spending just to cover up the shame?
Yeah, it's again, it's a great question and interesting psychology. We all tell ourselves stories every day. We don't necessarily say one, they don't start once upon a time, but when we're in a situation, we tell ourselves those stories. I'm not very good at money. I'm not very good at this. I've never been able to do that. I'm not as pretty as so and so, or whatever the story is, and the what I try and get clients to do is to look for those situations where that no longer served their needs. So what was the situation, specific to money shame? Let's talk about what are some situations where there was no money shame, or that money shame didn't work for you, where, people just, they were at the same level of success. And so they didn't have to worry about that, or they were equally didn't have money and everyone was no one was noticing. And how can we then begin to change the stories that we tell ourselves, which is one of the ways that I help people to recreate that emotional experience that they had when they were children that drive some of that behavior today. Is what can we see about decisions that you've made or situations that you've been in as an adult where the outcome hasn't been the money shame or the money this, or so that you can see, oh yeah, I don't have to, I am actually good at math. I do deserve to have this money, or whatever the emotion underlying it is that I help people to see that, in fact, that story isn't true anymore. That story might have been true when they were kids, but as an adult or as a young adult, or older adult even, that story is no longer true. So I help people look for examples of when it's not true so that they can begin to remind themselves, wait a second, here are all the times, they can look at the list that we've put together, here are all the times when that wasn't the case. So they begin to
Yeah.
change the story to themselves. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense actually. It really makes sense. And I think it's also one way is unlearning the not all truth is truth. Not all story is true. Some you come to find out that okay, this doesn't work for me, and I don't have to hold on to it just because it's been there for years. So I have to unlearn it and embrace, something else. So we are almost coming to the end of the show, and to our audience, thank you so much for being here with us. If you have any question, this is the time you can start typing in right there. We are having Ms Eileen Slatko from DSS Consulting. She is a financial consultant as well as an advocate of mastering your money behaviors. So if you are struggling with any financial behavior, or you have any question, just drop it in the chat box and we will be more than happy to ask our guest speaker to speak about it. So as we wind up, Miss Eileen, what behavioral approach to managing money would you recommend to our audience?
It has to be a conscious thought. You have to retrain yourself to be very conscious about all of those decisions. Because what we do is most of us do this. Every decision becomes a one-off decision. Oh, I just got paid. I have money in the bank. I can buy fill in the blank without saying, what are the needs that I have that are coming up? Will I have enough money if I buy this? And how does that impact what I want to do for my financial goals? So we make these one-off decisions in a patchwork. We don't think of them as a whole. So I would say to be very, conscious about every decision that you make, just how it all works together. Because ultimately, it's up to us to
Yeah.
it's up to us to get it right. And so, to do that, we need to step back and really look at the whole of where we want to go, how we want our life to be, and what we can do to impact that today. And that's a question every day that we ask.
Absolutely. Actually, I like the fact that you said being conscious is it's like the backbone of everything. And the more you practice it, the more you master more about money, because spending is an emotional thing. And as you said, we are not against spending, but doing it consciously is more healthy for you, not just financially but even emotionally. So as we get to wind up, what's that money principle you always live by, and what's your favorite money quote?
Yeah. So my favorite my own money philosophy is, and this is one I tell people all the time and they laugh because it's so simple, but it's live on less. Live on less than you make, live on less than you think you need, live on less than you've been living on. Practice living on less, because that begins to force you to uncouple, to decouple that emotional aspect of it. And then the money is there for better use, different use, future use. And I have seen and talked to a lot of people, and because our money decisions are so emotionally driven, I think that it's to show to the rest of the world that we're good enough, we're smart enough, we're successful enough, we're whatever. It fills up something in us, but the hole that we have, the emotional need we have, actually then we project out into the world. So the spending helps to cover that up. So I have a quote, and it was actually Will Rogers. I'm going to read it here. He said,
Okay.
too many people spend money they earned to buy things they don't want to impress people that they don't like. You know, I mean, yeah, you know, like I've always said, right, if you like me, then it doesn't really matter what I have or what I, you know, it doesn't really matter what I have. And if you're predisposed to not like me, then you're going to judge me on all sorts of things. But if you don't like me, then what do I care? Because you're going to judge me anyway, right? So anyway, that's a quote I like. But my philosophy is simple: just live on less.
Yeah, live on less. 2 words. No, 3 words. Live on less. That's it. I like it. I really like it. Actually, being frugal is very, very important. And, you know, it brings a certain kind of peace. You don't have to worry, oh, I have overspent. I haven't paid my bills and I've bought a new shoe that I won't need it, or I'm trying to impress people who won't even tell me you look good, you know.
Right. It gives you peace of mind when you can live on less. It becomes a game. And then when you put that money to good use, you know, later by having it invested, it multiplies so many times that you continue to have peace of mind. So
Wow. Thank you so much, Eileen, for this amazing session. You have been so, so great. I love this session. And thank you for sharing with our audience such a noble information. I believe most of them are going to benefit from watching this live video. So to everyone that has been with us throughout the show, thank you so much. If you have any question afterwards, you can post in the comments, and we'll definitely get in touch with Eileen to answer it back, and we get back to you. So until then, Eileen, maybe you could tell us more about your organization as we wind up.
DSS Consulting, you can find me. It's dssfinancial.com. And I do coaching. I've got some classes that are going online soon. I think a fun fact I just announced that I'm actually starting in July. I'll be on Roku TV and Apple TV with a program geared directly to women, young women, about financial education. And it's called The It Show, because sometimes learning about money or understanding money feels like such an it show.
Congratulations on your upcoming show. I'm so excited and proud of you. And I believe it's going to impact a lot of people globally. So yeah, until then, to our audience, thank you so much. You can reach her out on dss.financial.com.
dssfinancial.com.
Yeah, dssfinancial.com. You can browse through her website and get to equip yourself more and know what you need to decouple so that you can live on less. So until then, thank you so much. Ensure you subscribe to our channel and keep safe. Wear your mask. Get vaccinated if possible. Goodbye.
Thanks. Bye.